You wake up, not rushed, not stressed, just normal. You check your bank account. There's money in it, not a lot, but enough. Enough to feel safe. So you tell yourself the same quiet sentence you've been repeating for years. I'm being responsible. You pay your rent. You pay your bills. You don't overspend. You're not reckless. You're not one of those people. And that's the problem. Because nothing feels wrong. No alarms. No crisis. No obvious mistake. Just stability. But ever notice something? Even when you do everything right, you don't move forward. Your income increases, but your life doesn't change. Your stress stays. Your freedom doesn't expand. Your time still isn't yours. So what's actually happening? Because this doesn't feel like failure. It feels like discipline. It looks like responsibility. But if you zoom out, it behaves like something else entirely. Something slower. Something quieter. Something that doesn't hurt today, but compounds over time. And if you don't see it, you won't stay broke. You'll stay stuck. Longer than you think. So here's the question. What if the thing you're most proud of is the exact reason you're not getting ahead? Segment 1, the responsible illusion. You get paid, and almost immediately, the money disappears. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but predictably. Rent, utilities, subscriptions, food, transport. It's clean, organized, controlled. You feel like you're doing everything right. But look closer. Every dollar already has an owner. Before you even touch it, you're not deciding where your money goes. You're confirming where it was already assigned. Ever notice that? You don't feel rich on payday. You feel temporarily relieved. Because for a moment, the pressure lifts. Then the system resets. Again, month after month. Same pattern. Same outcome. This is what looks like control, but behaves like dependence. Because you're not building anything. You're maintaining everything. And maintenance doesn't create wealth. It preserves survival. There's a difference. A big one. Because when your entire financial life is designed to sustain your current lifestyle, there's no room left to expand it. So even when you earn more, you don't escape. You just upgrade the system that keeps you in place. And that's when the real shift happens. Not in your bank account, but in your identity. You stop asking, how do I grow? And start asking, how do I keep this running? That's not wealth thinking. That's system preservation. And once that mindset locks in, something else begins to form. Something quieter, more dangerous, because it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like progress, until you realize you've been running on a treadmill the entire time. So the real question becomes, if you're not overspending, and you're not struggling, why does it still feel like you're not getting ahead? Segment 2, the silent expansion trap. You earn more. Finally, a raise, a new opportunity, a better month. And for a moment, it feels like things are about to change. This is it. This is where it shifts. But then something subtle happens. You don't notice it immediately, because it feels justified. Your lifestyle expands, not dramatically, just slightly. A better apartment, more convenience, higher quality, more comfort. Nothing extreme, just upgrades, and every single one of them makes sense. That's what makes it dangerous. Because now, your responsible life costs more to maintain, so your new income doesn't create freedom. It reinforces obligation. Ever notice that your upgrades never feel like upgrades for long? They normalize, fast. What once felt like luxury becomes baseline. And once it becomes baseline, it becomes non-negotiable. Now you don't want it, you need it. And that's where the trap locks in. Because now your financial structure isn't flexible anymore. It's fragile. Everything depends on everything continuing. The income, the job, the stability. Remove one piece, and the whole system tightens. You don't feel it daily, but it's there, in the background, a quiet pressure. You can't take risks. You can't step back. You can't pause, because your lifestyle has no margin. And margin is where freedom lives. Without it, you're just maintaining a higher version of the same loop. And here's the part most people miss. This isn't about spending. It's about identity. Because now, your lifestyle isn't just how you live. It's who you are. And once identity attaches to cost, walking away feels like losing yourself. So you stay. You maintain. You protect, even if it's costing you your future. Which leads to a harder realization. What if the real problem isn't how much you spend, but what you refuse to give up? Segment 3, the delayed wealth trap. You tell yourself, I'll start saving seriously later. When income is higher, when things stabilize, when life gets easier. And it sounds reasonable, smart even, because right now, You're just getting established. But here's what's actually happening. Every month you delay, you're training your system, training it to operate without wealth, training it to survive without margin, training it to function at full capacity. So when more money does come, it doesn't create space. It fills gaps automatically because your system is already optimized for consumption, not accumulation. Ever noticed how fast money disappears when it arrives? That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. You've built a structure that absorbs everything. So even growth gets neutralized. And here's the part that doesn't feel good. This isn't about money. This is about how you've been living. Because wealth isn't built when it's convenient. It's built when it's uncomfortable. When it forces trade-offs. When it requires you to not upgrade, to not expand, to not follow the default path. But most people don't do that. They wait, and waiting feels safe. But it's not neutral. It compounds, in reverse, because time is still moving. And while you're delaying wealth, you're accelerating dependency, which creates a gap, a growing one, between where you are and where you think you'll be. And that gap doesn't close with income. It closes with behavior. So now the question shifts again. If time is already working against you, what exactly are you waiting for? Amy, segment 4, the control illusion. You feel in control. You track your expenses. You budget. You plan. You're aware, more than most people. And that should be enough. But it isn't. Because awareness without structure doesn't change outcomes. It just makes you more conscious of them. Ever noticed how you can understand everything and still not move forward? That's not lack of knowledge. That's lack of system. Because real control isn't knowing where your money goes. It's deciding what it does before it gets there. There's a difference. Right now, you earn and then distribute. What if that's backwards? What if the first person who gets paid should be you, not your landlord, not your subscriptions, not your lifestyle? You. Because right now, you're working for everyone else first and yourself last. And whatever's left is what determines your future, which usually means nothing is left. So your future gets nothing again and again and again. This is the hidden structure behind responsibility. It feels disciplined, but it prioritizes everything except ownership. You're efficient, but not effective. And effectiveness is what builds wealth, not effort. So here's the uncomfortable shift. You don't need to manage your money better. You need to reorder your system. Because until you do, everything you earn will continue to pass through you without ever staying with you. And if nothing stays, nothing grows. So now we're at the real question. What does it actually look like to take control? It doesn't start with more income. It doesn't start with a perfect plan. It starts with a decision. A quiet one, invisible from the outside. You get paid. And before anything else happens, you remove a portion. Not later. Not if there's extra. First, no discussion. No negotiation. That money is no longer available. Not for spending. Not for lifestyle. Not for comfort. It's yours. To keep, to build, to multiply. At first, it feels small, almost pointless, like it won't make a difference. But that's the illusion. Because what you're changing isn't the amount. It's the direction. For the first time, your system isn't designed to consume everything. It's designed to retain something. And that changes everything. Because now, growth has a place to exist. And once something stays, it can work quietly, in the background, while you live your life, while you sleep, while you forget about it. And over time, that invisible layer starts to expand, slowly, then faster. Not because you're working harder, but because your system is finally aligned with ownership. This is where the shift happens, not in your income, not in your expenses, but in your identity. You're no longer someone who maintains a life. You're someone who builds a future, and that changes how you see everything. Spending becomes a trade-off, not a default. Income becomes a tool, not a reward. Time becomes leverage, not pressure. And the best part? From the outside, nothing looks different. Same job, same life, same routine. But internally, everything is moving in a different direction. And that direction compounds, quietly, relentlessly, until one day, you notice something. The pressure is gone. Not because life got easier, but because your system stopped depending on everything going right. You created margin, and margin created control. Real control, not the kind that feels organized, the kind that gives you options. And options are what wealth actually buys. Not things, not status, not upgrades. Options. The ability to step back, to say no, to change direction, To not need everything to continue exactly as it is. That's the part most people miss. They think wealth is about having more, but it's really about needing less from the system that once controlled you. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Because now, every financial decision reveals something deeper, not just what you can afford, but what it's costing you long term. And that's where the next layer begins. Because this is just the foundation. The real trap isn't just how you spend, it's what you upgrade as your life improves. And that mistake is what keeps people stuck for decades. If you want to see how that plays out, watch this next. The lifestyle upgrade that quietly ruins your future. Because once income increases, most people don't escape the system. They reinforce it